Hello, beautiful ladies and handsome gentlemen, and welcome to today's video where we're going to be doing husband versus wife movie reviews. Today we're going to be doing the movie Becket, which was directed by Peter Glenville. What do you think?
Oh, we're right off to the core of it. What are we attacking first?
I don't know. Should we talk about the plot first, or do you want to,
I'm going to give an overview.
Okay, you give the overview of the plot.
I'm going to give an overview. We are in 1100s England. We have the Norman conquering elite who came over in 1066. The great-grandson of the king who came over and conquered all the native Britons. This king, Henry II, is in command now. His right-hand man, his best friend, is Thomas Becket, a native Saxon who Henry has uplifted to the nobility, has made a noble. It's controversial.
So real quick pause. The movie of Becket isn't historically accurate. So Becket himself was not actually Saxon,
He was Norman. The movie is based on a play called Becket. The play itself was historically inaccurate, based upon the plausible, apparently, notion at the time it was written that maybe Becket was Saxon. When the playwright was asked, but isn't he actually Norman? He said something to the effect of, right now, history has decided he's Norman, but I'm writing this in case history thinks again that he's Saxon.
Right.
The old archbishop dies. Henry II thinks he has the cleverest idea ever, and he has his best friend, his Chancellor of England, nominated to be the replacement wife.
The movie is how the rest of that plays out.
Now that he's been given religious responsibility, he discovers for himself deep well of religious sentiment and honor, and that he won't betray his religious mission,
right,
being steward of the Catholic Church in England, for the sake of what the king wants as an expedient thing. Spoiler alert.
Spoiler alert!
For something that happened 900 years ago. Becket is killed
at
the end of the movie.
Also at the beginning of the movie. I wanted to talk about it, because you're starting to get into it, the really intense relationship and chemistry, in a way,
yes,
between the two main actors, who are Richard Burton and Peter O'Toole, and in the script, in the story, are Henry II and Thomas Becket. Peter O'Toole was incredibly cast. I mean, these are two of the best actors of their time, and they're kind of at the peak of their performances. They're both really incredible Shakespearean actors, and even though this isn't Shakespeare, they're using all of the tools that they had been trained with to really delve into these characters.
Yes. And what I found impressive about it, and it took me aback, is that both men, they play their parts with a manfulness, a confidence, a charisma, a stridency, so you get the full range of emotions of the character, but you don't get that kind of overacted sentimentality that people do as acting nowadays. You see a lot of actors in movies, especially male actors, and it's either guys who can't act, and so it's more of an action movie thing or a CW hunk type thing. Yeah. But when it comes to a grown man who has some measure of responsibility, some measure of a cause that he represents, it doesn't come across, it doesn't feel like there's a seriousness there. Yeah. It feels kind of mawkish. It feels maudlin or sentimental or this or that. It
doesn't seem like any of the men, the actors that we see nowadays. I could name a couple. I could name a couple from today. But I think that it's rare to find actors who can actually embody a king.
Yes.
Or embody a saint, essentially. Thomas Becket wasn't a saint at the time.
No.
But the idea of his character.
Canonized.
You're correct. Yeah. I think that they're both incredibly masculine, and not in the sense that we kind of mean it today, where they're built in a certain way or they look a certain way, because that's not what it's about. It's
entirely psychological and kind of social role and purpose-driven. Yeah. And that's the thing to me about this movie is its representation of characters as either tied to purpose or not tied to purpose. Whereas before he was a toady to the king, a fixer for him. Now he's found a principle worth living and dying for, instead of just kind of doing anything to preserve his own life.
And I think that the mastery in the filmmaking is that the movie takes its time. It takes, I want to say, almost 40 minutes for us to just get to know Becket before he becomes Archbishop of Canterbury. So you actually have time to see him as a person who thinks of himself only as a survivor, because as a Saxon, Saxons were treated very, very poorly, and that wasn't really their land anymore. It had been taken from them. And so he was constantly, he says throughout the movie, he doesn't really, or at least at the beginning, bless you, excuse me. He says that he doesn't have honor. He doesn't recognize honor. He doesn't know how to live with honor. And it's because he, in my opinion, and I think that it's kind of shown throughout, it's because he was living his life with survival as the only option. And so his honor just gets pushed to the side. He's like, that's secondary. I can do that. I can deal with this when it's important. And it's not until he gets to the point where he's the archbishop that he actually realizes, even though it's been this way for years, that he's not just surviving. And so when he doesn't have to just survive, he can find purpose.
So a brief note on the way honor is used in this movie. Honor is higher principle, purpose, anything that would give life the meaning so that you are living for something other than just the mere act of living itself. You can imagine the comparison of, if you were just, if you were kept alive in a coma, are you living for something? No, you're just you would be preserving life that is merely the physical act of being alive, versus you are alive to do something, experience something, serve something, maintain an ideal, help other people, build up a nation, honor God, any of those things. So honor here for Thomas Becket, he is a collaborator. He is someone who is selling out his fellow oppressed Saxon because he has the opportunity to get away with having the fine material pleasures that attend with being the king's best friend. And a wonderful developed theme in the movie is you see him kind of ironically joining in with King Henry II in the debaucherous, disgusting things that he does. Thomas helps him out with that, rides around with him, is a fixer for those kind of things, but you see that he has a disdain for it all, and he hates himself for doing it, but he has no hook in to anything that he believes that he would actually do rather than this, and so he has that kind of nihilist, millennials suffer from this kind of impulse of, there's nothing that I find that I can honor, nothing exalted that I'm willing to lower myself before and be humbled beneath to serve, but the mere act of living is so hollow, and I recognize how kind of degraded and unfulfilling what I'm doing is, that I feel this hollow emptiness where I won't check out of life, I won't let myself die, I will work to preserve my own life, but the mere act of living makes me hate myself for just doing it. And so you see him this 1 foot in, 1 foot out kind of mentality, and
it's kind of interesting because they have the way the movie is structured, the way the play is structured, going off what you're saying, is that you see him at the beginning kind of joyfully partake in what the king is doing. And then he sees the king actually talk about Saxon people as its.
Yes, it, dog, pig.
And you see him suddenly, Beckett's character starts to kind of have a change of heart. And then slightly...
I wouldn't say entirely.
No, even though he says to the girl, like, don't come.
Well, so I don't think that's a change of heart. I think that's Becket 1 foot in, 1 foot out, so he enjoys his debaucherous carousing with Henry II, and then when there are quieter moments, or moments in which it's not just fun and games, but instead the darker turn to it is just there, it's when he is in the mode of recognizing and thinking about it, and you get the sense that this is the way it's been for a while, that this is the dynamic of the relationship. So a thing in the movie is Henry II, even after Becket is archbishop and opposes him, Henry II loves and adores Becket, and it's because he recognizes in Becket that though Becket, first half of the movie, doesn't have his honor, he is a man of great moral yearning and capacity wasted on serving Henry II. So Henry...
You think Henry recognizes that?
He does, because he recognizes when his mother and his wife speak ill of Becket He yells at them. He hates them for it. He moans to Becket after he causes Gwendolyn to die. You're going to hate me now, and I can't trust you. He yearns for Becket's love because he knows Becket is a man of great spiritual and moral potential. He says that it's his friendship with Becket that caused him to realize the idea of his empty style of living, and so he hates Becket now for actually acting on being moral and actually striving to live for something, which means that's now made apparent, and so he can't live, as he says of his barons, you don't think, you just wench or whore, you drink, you fight, you take what you want, not a thought goes through your heads, you're like hounds, I envy you, I wish I were like you. Instead, Becket has ruined me, and now that Becket has actually taken moral action and won't just bring himself down to Henry II's level, Henry feels acutely the comparison, kind of the spurning that came with it. And because Henry II won't act morally, he won't uplift himself, he will remain a utterly insufficient moral person, it burns and rots him, and so he needs to tear down Becket. He needs Becket to love him and validate him, or he needs to just get rid of Becket so that he doesn't feel the comparison.
I feel like there's a couple layers to the king's obsession with him. I think that the relationship between Henry and Becket is also, like, that obsession also has to do with the fact that Becket is unattainable. Becket talks about how he can't love, and how he doesn't find love until he finds God. And when Henry talks about him, he can't not use the word love. He has to express how much he loves Becket. And Becket was never able to feel love for Henry. And I think that for Henry, when he could have everything he wanted, and he had, in a way, Becket's body and mind, but he never had his heart. Because Becket was always there for him, but not actually there for him.
So I'm going to hook off this. So the love of God phrase here, really important, because what does it mean to love God, at least in this context? It means to recognize purpose in God and validate that the purpose there is in God, in serving God and walking with God. Whatever that is thought to mean, that's what it is. Love of God is the recognition of the value of God and necessity of trying to follow through on that purpose. So love of the person here is finding purpose in that person, whatever the relationship is. It's you find your meaning, you find the justification of what you're doing with your time on earth. The very purpose of your life is in that person in a way, right? You love your child. The way in which one loves a child is the sense that it is for this that I live. You love a spouse. One of the most relevant ways in which you love your spouse, and what that means is it is for this that I live. So Becket cannot love Henry because Becket is a collaborationist. He's there for the finery, the joy, the material pleasures. For the survival, and survival's a big theme here. Like there's no ethic in the survival of Becket because he could be poor and on any given day beaten, abused, plundered, or murdered by one of the barons of Henry II. Instead, he's joined in on that, so it won't happen to him, and he has a good time of things. But he's a smart enough man with enough of a innate moral instinct that he recognizes how hollow that is, so he has no love for that which he does. And he hates himself because he knows that he himself is not worth loving because there's no purpose in his own life. You can love your life in the sense that it is a life for serving a purpose that you love. So love of God can lead to love of self. Stuff like that. And so he just kind of coldly detached from Henry. He takes like an ironical amusement in it.
Detached from Gwendolyn.
For all 4 minutes of it?
It is interesting,
for
isn't
all
it?
One scene.
I was going to say, isn't it interesting that this big, important moment you would think could be a huge plot point, or is a huge plot point, is only given this much screen time.
And it is not revisited and is not discussed ever again.
But it's because they that's not the focus. The focus is between him and Henry. They don't even want to get to, in my opinion.
It's not about any woman in the movie.
Yes. It's like, let's not get into any romance. Let's not try and make the issue fuzzy.
Is this the greatest bromance movie of all time? And
maybe.
It's a tragedy. It's the Romeo and Juliet of movies.
Well, I guess you could say... I also think that Frodo and Sam have a Bromeo and Juliet.
Not like this. Not like that.
But they save the world. It's a whole different thing.
They don't save the world.
They do.
They save one civilization, one set of species. One set of species. Look,
what?
The orc and goblins would be alive. It would be their world. It'd still be around.
Okay, never mind. Totally unrelated.
So back to the Romeo and Juliet. It's that there's a tragic falling apart of a friendship, except that it was doomed from the beginning because there was an asymmetrical basis for why they were close. As degraded as Henry is, as degraded as Henry's approach to life is and what it draws out of Becket in terms of their actions in the world, such as with women or whatever.
Yeah.
The relationship between the two of them, what's relevant concern is on as high an operating plane as you can get of purpose for a life itself.
Right.
Right? There's no higher question to ask because it's the first question of why. Every other question would stem from that. But if you answer why a specific way, then everything's going to go one way. If you have no answer for why, then what is there? There is no next step because there's nothing to justify it. There would not be anything.
Yeah.
So the why of each man trying to pursue his purpose, except Henry doesn't, hates himself for it, and then hates Becket for making him realize he hates himself for it, is absolutely fantastic.
Yeah. No, it's a great movie, and I think that the you can analyze it. I feel like we could talk about it for a while. I think that what I'd like to touch on is kind of more of the cinematic elements of it, because I think we talked about the story and the writing and the acting, which is all fantastic. But the costumes are incredible. The
pageantry.
Yes.
Oh, the pageantry.
The actual
set design.
Yeah, the set design is really gorgeous. I mean, the whole movie feels like it was shot on a high budget, and it feels like it was it's happening in that time period.
The phrase, maybe from back then, I'm taking this from the way that they spoke about it in Hail Caesar, so grain of salt, but a prestige picture.
Yeah.
This came across like there was a lot to do, a AAA production that would be marquee, figuratively and literally. It's a dark movie in the sense that what Henry does, and what his character represents, and him being in command as the ruler, and just the grotesque animal aspect of him, is so morally revolting and self-aware, so that it really turns your stomach. But the movie doesn't dwell on it. There's no sting, dun, dun, dun. The people around him go, oh, and speak about it in hushed tones.
No, because he's still the king.
He's the king. And it's also the times, in a certain sense of, yes, the people around the king are the guys who get to enjoy it and participate in it with him. Yeah. His own mother, well, she's the mother of a king. She's grotesquely immoral as well. His own wife, immoral as well. His kids, little rats as well. Like, it's just, the movie doesn't need to have the world unrealistically bounce back at you. This is dark. Don't you know it's dark? Again, the movie assumes so much more intelligence from its audience.
Yeah,
it's
a
so
story
fantastic
that you can pick up on without it being a moral story.
What's the phrase? You'll remember the answer a lot more if you can do the math. So 2 + 2 = 4 is nowhere near as memorable as 2 + 2 =. And if you fill in 4, it sticks out in your head. Not that you would need to memorize that, but you apply the concept.
But,
so this movie, I put a bow on it.
Yeah.
This movie is 2 + 2 = like the script, and it's, I think, that style of prestige picture from that time, because we saw Man for All Seasons, and it was also very similar. It doesn't talk down to its audience. No. It's also not like a high concept movie with abstract thinking or inscrutable art house style of we're going to just not tell you things and you take away your own meaning. No, it's right there in front of you. It has one meaning. It's just that because it's realistically subtle and portrays people as people, it's that much more compelling.
Right. So yes, I think that this movie, I'm trying to think of something that I didn't like.
The last half, 1/3 dragged a little bit.
I can see that. And I can see that there's, you kind of have to go in with the expectation that it is a play, first and foremost, and not a film written for the screen. And that means that there's going to be a lot of dialogue, which is really important, but as compared to movies written nowadays, it's going to take some time for things to develop. And as well, there are the moments that happen in the church where they show the entirety of him becoming Archbishop.
No, I didn't even mind that. That was not something I minded.
I can imagine that it might seem kind of like, why do we have to sit through this? And there's a purpose that you want to see the gravity of this moment for him, but it can feel, I think it can feel a little bit slow. And there were a couple of shots that took me out of the movie. I thought that were a little funny looking. Where, like, there was twice in the movie that they shot Peter O'Toole in the foreground and then the person he was talking to in the background. And it looked slightly odd. So, would you recommend this movie? I'm gonna say...
Would I recommend this movie? Are we at the point where people still don't know whether or not we would recommend this movie?
Would you recommend this movie, audience?
Based on what you've been talking about? That based on just the hearsay aspect of, these two people were rambling on about the movie, would you recommend it to a third party?
I'd recommend it.
I loved it so much that based on the way we were talking about the amount of love we have, you should recommend it to another person before you watch it.
Yeah, don't.
You get another person, watch it with them.
We hope you enjoyed this video. Please subscribe to my blog, subscribe to my channel, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye!